Welcome back to Gnostic Informant, and you are about to attain true gnosis. And today I'm opening up the floor for everybody to get in on a discussion about our own personal theories about this book that we've been talking about for so many centuries, for so many hundreds, and for 2,000 plus years, if you want to count just the Old Testament. What do you guys think? I mean, there's some wide-ranging theories in scholarship on when it was created, when it was written, how the New Testament came about, who was Jesus, when was the first gospel written, did Mark write it, did Matthew write it? There's so much to get into. So I figure we can have an open discussion and we can all voice our own opinions. Super chat skipped the line, obviously, but I'm going to monitor the chat. If you want to jump in, if you have a camera and a mic, if you want to jump in real quick, I will drop the link in the description. So I should do that right now, actually. Yeah. There's the link. I do have a guest coming on in about half an hour. Whoops, sorry about that. I had a window open. It was me watching myself. So I do have someone come on in half an hour. It's going to jump on and sort of jump in the conversation as well. But right now, let's get into it. Let's get into this thing. Myth Vision Podcast Derek has already dropped a super chat, and I'm just going to use this as a springboard to give my own theory on this whole thing, and then we can give it to someone else. So, what does the donkey and Yahweh have in common? Love you, bro. Hello there, Jennifer. By the way, Jennifer, I saw your comments right before I started this stream. I wasn't here like when you were writing them. I didn't see them at first, but I just saw them right before this stream, and now I can't see them anymore. I don't know what happened to them. So I don't know if I can't really pull them up anymore, but I appreciate those super chats. I really do. I don't want you to think there was ever any bad air between us. You know, it was just a disagreement on something about history. It's like, things happen like that. That stuff happens. And that's just how it is sometimes, So let me just pin that comment to the top real quick. But yeah, so Derek asked the question about the donkey. And if you watch my episode I did with M. David Litwa, when I interviewed him about the Marcionism and the evil creator, there's actually some pretty decent evidence that Set, I guess you would say Set, I don't know if it's Set or Typhon or some Egyptian deity with a donkey head, has influenced the imagery of Yahweh. And imagery of Yahweh, I thought there is no images of Yahweh. Well, there's two stories. The one story is that Antiochus IV, when he sacked the temple of Jerusalem, he found a donkey head. And there's two different versions. One version says that he found a man on a donkey, and the other version is that he found a donkey head. But that by itself is pretty much like whatever. It's he said, she said. Until you come across another story from a Levite high priest who went into the temple and he saw the donkey head and like it freaked him out. So there's two different opposing stories that are sort of like aiming towards a common thing. So, take it with a grain of salt. We don't know how true these stories are. Tacitus does have a really interesting story in book 5 of his histories, where he says that the Israelites, when they were kicked out of Egypt, they were so salty about it that they decided that they were going to worship everything in opposition to the Egyptians. So the Egyptians who worship Osiris, his evil brother is Set. So I guess he's like implying that they would go to this god as their god. But that's not even the crazy part. Tacitus says that they were starving and thirsty in the desert for 6 days. And on the 7th day, which today is Saturday, Sabbath, on the 7th day, when they were about to die of dehydration, wild donkeys led them to water. So that made the donkey image sacred, according to Tacitus, which is interesting because it's like it sort of explains the 7-day thing. And like, I don't know. I'm not saying it's true. It's Tacitus. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He says a bunch of weird shit in his books. So it could just be a nonsense, but I just think it's interesting to bring that up. If I had to go with my own personal theory on all this, I would say that these books were written over the course of time by, people in the land of Judea, influenced by Ugaritic, Sumerian, and Egyptian text. And let's not forget that Judea was actually part of Egypt's colonization sphere for like, look at this, for like 1,000 years. They were basically just part of Egypt. So you get artifacts like this. This is Hezekiah's. That's Hezekiah. It has his name on there, and there's an Ankh on the right. So it's like, it's not that surprising that they would be influenced by Egyptian stuff, mythology, but also they're right next to Babylon and maybe even the Hittites. Who knows? I'm just saying they're getting their influences from other places, but they're personalizing these texts. They're nationalizing these texts. They're applying them to the times that they're in and writing them in Hebrew. And then I think you get individual scrolls, which leads me to the next thing about what Russell Gamerkin thinks about this whole thing starting in post Alexander the Great time. I think he's onto something, but I don't think he's correct. I think there was individual scrolls before this. I think the idea of a Bible being put together in one book, he might be right about that. He might be right. That might be the time where they decided we should have this all together in one book. But I think that these texts show that they predate this time period, like Job, or I don't know, like some of these prophets, like the time periods they're in. Like Daniel for sure is not dated in the 500s. It's for sure in the 200s or 100s BC. But I think some of these texts do have some merit behind them as for being old books. Yeah, so that would explain the Old Testament. And then I think the New Testament, what happens is all of a sudden you have all these synchronistic movements happening all over Egypt, Syria, Asia Minor. And I think Judaism was no exception to that rule. There was synchronistic movements happening within Judaism, which I think is what Christianity is. So I think Jesus really was a person who led a movement, and he gets crucified in Jerusalem. I think one of his predictions was the temple would fall within, maybe he guessed it. Maybe he guessed within 40 years, and then it happened. And that would explain why no one's talking about Jesus until after 70. Because all of a sudden after 70, Jesus is a big thing. Before 70, he's almost non-existent. So if you can grant that he predicts the temple would fall, it would explain why he becomes such a big deal after the temple. We have a guest, James. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing, man?
How you doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good.
All right, so I got really like a question for you, right? Because here's how I'm always seeing this. Me being a person of, I guess, African descent, right?
Sure.
We, at least like with some of us, we see Christianity more of a European religion, right? Now, there's like a certain debate going on right now within, I guess, the community of people who talk about that, at least on like my side and everything like that. And I want to hear your opinion, because like in my opinion is that Christianity is mostly made up of things that you will find in European archetypes when we talk about mythology, when we're talking about just like in religion in general, especially when they were tying Christianity, getting Christianity away from Judaism and more tying in with the Roman and the Greek religion. Because there's a lot of Greek influence in the Bible itself already. So would you say Christianity, and specifically Christianity, is more of a European like form religion?
Yeah.
As opposed to
I would actually agree with that, because if you look at the time period, the Macedonians take over Egypt, right? When Alexander the Great, the Ptolemaic Empire was basically Macedonian empire that was trying to adopt Egyptian culture just so they can look like, oh, look, we're one of you guys.
Right.
So I think as a result of that, you get a confusing. But the reason why I bring that up is because I really do think Christian theology comes out of Alexandria, Egypt, mostly. Like, I think there was a grassroots movement in Judea from Jesus and his followers. But I think after that happens, I think like people like Peter or Mark, whoever you want to call it, I think they go to Alexandria, and that's where they write the gospel. That's where they get their information from. That's where they get their theology from. They're borrowing from Philo. So I think that's like the Frankenstein center for all this stuff is Alexandria, and that would also explain why you have all these European influences happening, because they're borrowing from Roman and Macedonian but also,
you know what?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So with that, right? So a lot of the people that argue, because some people that we argue with try to say that it's African because it happened in Alexandria, is happening in Egypt. But with those particular people, like these church fathers, like what's his name, Clement, and like what's his name, not Arias, like these church, him. So like a lot of these people who are like in Alexandria, in Egypt, or just in North Africa, I say that they are like ethnically Greek, and that they're living there, that are writing in this Greek language, which was the common language. Other people would have known it besides Greeks. But I think the people who are really pushing this are Greek converts to this religion.
Yeah, you got
the early church fathers are ethnically Greeks. They're not ethnically North African or African or anything like that. There might have been some. I'm not going to leave that out, but I really think it comes from that.
Do you think the Nag Hammadi, like the Coptic scriptures, do you think those have some more influence on from actual Egyptian mythology? Do you think?
I would believe so, because at least with that time, Christianity is going to split into like what they call the Oriental and what they call the Orthodox. Well, eventually Orthodox, and the Catholic is the Western branch. So like the Coptic, like the Ethiopian church is part of the Coptic church, or at least it derives from there, because like the dude who really brings Christianity into Ethiopia was a Greek from Cyprus. So they're already in that tradition. And that tradition by that point is already like 300 years old. But when we talk about the Copts, since the Copts speak a language, at least their language is closest to ancient Egyptian.
Right.
I really do believe they are taking those ideas with Coptic Christianity. Well, within the ancient Egyptian religion, and all the Greek influences that would have came in later, like with Serapis and all that other stuff. And that it just trickles down, and they just make it where the focus is on the theology is just the same, Jesus, Son of God, in order to be, I guess forgiven for sins, you gotta accept him and everything like that. But the little details are really drawing from the ancient Egyptian religion. Even Jesus himself, at least with the iconography, you seeing things like, Horus, you're seeing the rising and dying god with Osiris, with Jesus. But then again, this is a motif that's throughout the Mediterranean world at the time, because you also got Apollo, you even got Mithra, you got like, I know people like to say Jesus is Mithra, but it don't line up exactly, but there are elements there that, like you even had the actually, I don't even know, and I don't know if you even covered this. Is there a connection between the Orpheus cults and Jesus?
Yeah, I'm just going to say this. M. David Litwa has finished recording a course that we're going to put out soon, me and Derek and M. David Litwa. And he has a whole entire hour, 45 minutes to an hour, based on the Orphic mysteries. And you're going to see how it clearly there's clearly some influencing on the Jesus movement. And I think when it comes to Jesus, when people say, oh, he's Mithra, oh, he's Serapis, or he's Apollo, or he's all these, well, I think they're missing the point. I think it's like, for example, today when you create a superhero like the Flash or Captain America or Batman, whoever, they're all going to look like another hero somewhat, because they fit the archetypal mold of what a superhero is. So in the ancient world, a Messiah or a god or a son of a god or, you know, Apollo, Dionysus, they're going to look similar to each other, but they're not. It's not like they're copying one. It's not one for one. They're just fitting the role of a savior or of a Messiah. That's what they're supposed to look like.
Right.
So I think you get a little bit of both. I think you get a little bit of everything. You get influences on all these things because they want to make the better. They want Dionysus to be better than Dionysus. They want Jesus to be better than Orpheus. They want Jesus to be better than Serapis. They want him to be the one that you're going to worship. They don't want him to be a copy of that guy. They also want him to be better than that. They want him to have those traits that you like about those other gods. But they're like, that's what I'm like. Jesus as a person clearly didn't do all those things that's written about in Mark. But they add those mythology to the story because they want you to believe. They want you to. This is what they want you to actually think is like this what he is. You know what I mean? And that's just like how it's done. You know?
Right. Yeah, man. Because like thinking about that, it's like even with like the disciple, it's like what people get wrong about Christianity. At least I feel is that like for Jesus, because you have a whole bunch of other people who people claim were messiahs. I don't think these individual people claim that they were the Messiah. I don't even think Jesus himself claims that he's the Messiah. But you do have these different people, like the dude like that drew circles in the sand. I think his name was Oni or something like that.
Yeah.
People consider him a Messiah, but you got to understand. But like people go into Christianity not trying to understand Jewish culture or Jewish religion at the time, and then like once you do, you understand why Jesus, at least a man, would have not been their Messiah. People like Simon Bar Kokhba would have fit that role more easily. You know what I mean?
Yes, I agree.
So
I think if the Bar Kokhba revolt was successful, you would be hearing about a Bar Kokhba offshoot right now, probably, because he would. Right. That's the guy who led us to salvation. You know.
There you go. Right, exactly. I think he fought the Romans, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I didn't know about that till someone brought him up. Because like people don't understand that the Messiah is supposed to be at least in I guess certain sects of Judaism, he's supposed to be a military figure. He's literally supposed to alleviate issue for the Jewish people that they're suffering under. So this is why like what Darius the Great is it Cyrus or Darius? Cyrus the Great. That's why he was considered Messiah, because he allowed them to go back to the promised land.
Right.
So when Messiah is someone who does a great good for the Jewish people as a whole. And in this concept, I don't know if there's other Messiah-like concepts in other cultures, but it's very specific. And it's weird that, but then again, you gotta think like the people who are the first followers of Jesus are Jewish, and they will claim Judaism. And I don't know if they had like this idea. So we do have, so like I said before, like we have these other influence from other places. But when it comes to Christianity in specific, is that really the work of a specific person, or is it the work of just a small group of people? Because like, how much did Paul influence? Because Paul is the one that takes it out of Judaism.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. When I look at it, you can clearly see, especially when you look at the early Christian movements, the Carpocratians, the Nacenes, the all these different, the Simonians, and how much of heretics they're considered today. But in the time period, they were just Christians. They were just normal Christians. Like the Simonians trace their lineage back to Peter and Simon Magus, and Carpocratians trace their lineage back to Peter, and they would have been considered holy people that you better listen to because they know what they're talking about. Fast forward 200 years, 300 years later, they're a bunch of heretics. They don't know what they're talking about. Don't read them. Don't listen to them. And
they don't believe in the Trinity. They don't do this and that. Yeah, it's like all that crazy.
And that's because you've got Christian theologians who are recreating the wheel for what Christianity is supposed to be. And that's how heretics and straight Orthodox, which is like our modern terms. They weren't real terms when Christianity first started.
You're right. It's like the big one that they put out there is Arius. Right. And Arius was a non-Trinitarian.
Absolutely.
So like that was a major thing, especially when Rome fell. I think a lot of the Visigoths, or like a lot of the people who sacked Rome, I think that they were Arianists at one point, and it might have been a way to kind of culturally push them out, so that because the Catholic Church, actually, I don't know when the Catholic Church formally formed. I don't know if the Catholic Church technically starts after the schism between the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Western Church.
Yeah, it's a good question. That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know, because they claim that there's popes like in Egypt and everywhere and everything like that. But that, I feel that comes more down to tradition than actual, like, like a historical source.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that the people that they're claiming didn't exist. It's just that their role that they put them in traditionally, I don't think, like they say, like Peter is the first pope. Don't
Right.
think that would work that way,
No.
because he was definitely Jewish. So
Saint Linus, who's the next one down after him, who apparently gets anointed by Peter to become the
right,
next in line, the next, living representation of Jesus. He's an Italian. So it's like the tradition tells us that Peter goes from, being one of these grassroots followers of Jesus to all of a sudden he's giving Italians the reins of the church. Like, doesn't sound right. But then you look at the actual history, you look at like how Constantine sort of started the whole state. I guess I don't know if it's a state religion yet, but like how he adopts Christianity into the fold. Well,
right,
at that point, Rome is still pagan. So
right.
so you have to look at it like, wait a minute, does this really line up the way they say it does? I don't think it does. So yeah.
You know what? I did have that kind of like a conspiracy that it's kind of messed up that the people who would have actually crucified Jesus, because I think the verse where they're talking about, like, let us and our children take the blame for his being crucified and everything, I think that's a later addition. I think that's a propaganda piece.
Yeah.
So I think because of that schism with what Paul had with Peter, because Peter was like, yo, Peter and James was like, yo, you got to be Jewish. And James, you got to remember, at least traditionally, is the brother of Jesus.
Right.
He would have grew up in the same house as this dude.
Right.
He says, yo, you got to follow kosher laws. You got to get the circumcision. You have to do this. You have to do that. And Paul said, like, no, you ain't got to do that. You can eat pork. It's not what goes in your mouth. It's like, it comes out of it. All that other stuff. He's just like completely wrecking everything. Right. So later on, there are problems with the Jewish people that these Romans have, because, the Jews don't like anybody, controlling them historically. So they're always going to fight. They're always going to, try to be independent, trying to be sovereign. Right. So I think what the later writers, or the people who are putting together the Bible, are taking books and intentionally, like, following Paul, getting away from Judaism and making them more so the enemy, as to what they would have been, and moving Jesus away from his Jewishness. And this is like a whole, like I just see the New Testament as this like pure, like anti-Semitic, like, thing.
I agree.
It's like, no, yeah, it's like I don't know why. Well, the thing is, and you put the Romans in the light, like Pontius Pilate would have not cared if he crucified Jesus. This was just another Tuesday for him.
Right.
But they make him the sympathetic figure, and then once you start getting passion plays, which don't even come around until like the early medievals, it just throws it into like overdrive. So I think there was a conspiracy to downplay the Jewishness of the Bible. That's why I don't like the term that they use, Judeo-Christian, because just give them an inch, and then
I agree.
we going back into programs and stuff. So I think what people need to understand is just that, and this is why I say that Christianity is more of a European religion than it's anything to what Peter, Simon, or James, or even Paul would have even been, would have even known. They probably didn't even believe in the Trinity. Technically, that would be heresy in Judaism, because God don't have a son.
Yeah, you're right. And it's especially when you look at how it played out, how it ended up becoming this like Latin Christianity versus this Greek Christianity. And you see how this Latin Christianity ends up being the European religion. Like it is the religion of Europe. Of course, you have your pagans before that. You have your Vikings, you have your pagans, you have like Slavic traditions, but those all get those all get stomped out within a couple of centuries of the church really dominating. It's really showing dominance over Europe. And that's like, so in hindsight, you're absolutely 100% right. Absolutely 100% right. It becomes the European tradition. Even the Byzantine Greek religion today is now the Russian Orthodox.
Mm-hmm.
Because when and people don't know this is some interesting history for you. In the 16th century, when Constantinople gets sacked, the whole church, they all flee to St. Petersburg, and they set up shop there, and that's where they've been ever since. Which, don't get me wrong, right today that they're back in their churches, like they had to get their positions back after being conquered. But like that's what happened though. That's what happened. They like the Russian Orthodox Church is descent from the Orthodox Church of Greece.
Right.
So it proves your point, basically, how these become very, very European and Russian, I guess you would say,
Right. Yeah, because you gotta think because Islam comes 500 years after Christianity.
Yeah.
So it's Christianity, Judaism, and whatever other religions that they were following indigenously for thousands of years before Islam completely takes over of the area. So yeah, Christianity, for the most part, a lot of the theologians, a lot of them ended up being from Europe. So in the fathers, so before we even get a Bible, a lot of the church fathers are European or of European descent in other places. Yeah. So because I think after, to be honest, I don't know of any other Jewish people besides Paul, because Paul was still Jewish. At least he was ethnically Jewish. Besides him, I don't see a lot of other Jewish people really pushing this. This is just other groups of people coming in and creating the ideology and the theology of Christianity, whatever point it was, until it evolves here. Because at the point that we are now, say my family got Seventh-day Adventists in it. My family got Baptists in it, or at least we went to a Baptist church, and all this other stuff that you would have in the South and all this, and up here in the United States. It's all this stuff comes out of Protestantism, which comes out of the Western Church or the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So already we on a tradition, on a path
on October 10th.
Already European.
Right.
So it's that was my thoughts on it.
No, that was really good. And Jennifer Silves just added that at 590 CE was the official establishment of Catholic authorities. So that answers both of them. And that lines up with what you said too. It's all later. It's all after the fact. It's all.
That's almost 200 years after Constantine. I think Constantine was in the 300s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I think there was one more pagan pagan Roman emperor after Constantine.
Julian,
and after him,
Julian the Apostate, and he was very successful, almost conquering Parthia. That's if he would have focused more on just matters inside the empire, he probably could have reversed things, but we can only speculate on that. But yeah, he was big time. He was not only trying to make paganism great again, he was trying to make Judaism Jewish again. He was trying to put the Jews back into he wanted to be like Cyrus. He wanted to let the Jews go back to Jerusalem and let them be Jewish and let the Christians go away and let Rome be pagan again. He wanted to bring things back to how Caesar had it, but it didn't work out. But it's very. I
got to look that up because that's very interesting.
Yeah,
that was the last point. That was the
last ditch effort to make things back to where they were in the antiquity.
Yeah, and then it just But I think around that, because Rome falls in the earlier part of the 500s.
Yeah,
Rome falls. So after that, it's just straight up Christianity. You said the Catholic authority, because the history of the Catholic Church is really really messy. Because you got people claiming who are popes who other people don't claim are popes, and
right.
But the the person put in the chat that it was like 590 CE. So I guess they got some type of, I guess, stability. But again, that will go as well. So it's always a battle. It's always a struggle for power, and that's what it is, and that's really what defines Christianity, at least today, at least a lot with the Abrahamic faith. It's about like power and like control. So
that's what it is.
Yeah, and that's what happens when a religion gets too big. Like it's just bound to happen.
Yeah. Well, I got someone else down there who wants to jump in. If you you could stick around if you want. It's up to you.
Nah, I gotta get going. But like, yeah, man, I wanted to just come in and ask my 2 cents, ask that question.
That was great. That was awesome. And anytime I do this, make sure you jump on, man.
Oh yeah, man, no problem. Yeah, man, I keep watching. I just discovered you not too long ago. Because some of the people in the community, they get into stuff like this, and it's like I really want to know what they're talking about. But you come on with the perspective of like the mystery cults, the things that people don't really talk about, at least a lot. And I appreciate it about your channel, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. That was good to hear. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem, man. All right, man. You have a good day.
You too. You too. Hey, David.
How you doing, Neil?
This is Dr. Ammon. For anyone who doesn't know, he is a teacher of Greek. If you want to learn Greek, I could put a link in the description for people to sign up for your courses. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that after this. But yeah, so what's going on, dude? What's up? I want to read a super chat really fast that I got because they've been waiting, and then we'll get right to it. Augusto Mamokit. Ezekiel is an alien abduction story. Changed my mind. So that's interesting because that's from the episode. I've seen this in the show Ancient Aliens, where they talk about how Ezekiel, with seeing those little, those little like rings with the eyes on them, he was really seeing aliens. Yeah. What do you think about that? You think that's some truth to that? I don't know.
He was seeing quantum aliens.
I think it was an internal trip. I think he was on something like ayahuasca. Yeah. Something.
He was one of those guys who had eyes to see and ears to hear. So
exactly. Thank you for that super chat, Augusto. I really appreciate that. Anytime, Joe. Yeah, I appreciate that. So it's actually pretty interesting, something to talk about. Like maybe we can get into the whole. Has aliens ever visited us? I don't know. I don't see any evidence of it, but I'm open to hear people talk about it. So you never know. What's going on?
I am in a good place to discuss the most esoteric ideas. I want to say James, who was just on, should check out the Libyan queen, who was the one who founded the Magi, because if it weren't for the Magi, none of us would ever have heard of Jesus. Okay.
Right.
And just like Socrates would have died in obscurity if it hadn't been for the oracle, right? The Pythia.
They say at Plato's funeral, the Magi came and attended.
Oh.
Did you hear about that? That's
a group started by a Libyan woman who migrated up to the Scythian influenced world and then created a medicine where she ended up having temples in Italy dedicated to her for her acts. Is she one of your extraterrestrials? No, she's one of those extra dimensionals. Yeah. So yeah, I thought James' comments were interesting, and so I wanted to point him in that direction because the Aryans.
He just dropped the comment. So this is the James you're talking about, right?
Yeah, he was just on. Okay. Yeah, he's the guy.
Jason, right? Or no, you're talking about James. Oh, you're talking about the person I hosted.
Yes, the person you hosted. He brought up the Aryans. Aryans.
I see. Well, since I already pulled it up, let me just read this out. Jason, Lord of the Sobek, Lord of the Four Corners. Thank you for the super chat. Hot take: if Paul hopped in a time machine into 2022, he'd nope out of the church after a week and become a high priest of the Santeria cult. He's probably right. They're probably the earliest Christians are probably into some of the craziest shit that we never that didn't get passed down to us, that got destroyed, erased, whatever. Like a little bit of Carpocratians that we know about, a little bit of the Nazians that we know about, a little bit of these Nicolaitans that we know about. It's all like, what the hell are they doing? But you know, you never know. Was Paul doing the same? How do you know Paul wasn't doing the same stuff?
You know, Paul had an immunity to viper venom, which some people found odd. But
what do you think that verse means? I think that verse is like, go ahead.
Not within the context of what was going on within the mysteries. So they were using venoms actively, and the whole dote and antidote science is huge in from antiquity and very, very understudied. So yeah, they had the antidotes for this stuff. You remember the ass and the dipsass and the sting of the thirst and all that? Yeah.
Or how about one of the definitions for Christos is they break apart the two words Chris and tos, which is to get stung by the gadfly. Right?
Yeah, it's from the verb chrio.
Chrio, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, and that verb means to get stung by the gadfly and into that state of what they called oestrus.
Right. And the reason this is so, if you actually look up anytime that phrase is uttered, stung by the gadfly, it's always in the context of the god Eros shooting his arrow and making people fall in love. So in the book, there's an ancient novel called Daphnis and Chloe, where Daphnis gets shot by Eros, and it says that Daphnis felt the sting of the gadfly. And that's a certain phrase that's used for when love happens. So if Jesus is the Christos, he's glove. You can argue that a lot of the things he says is like Eros, like he's another. And that's like one of his layers, because he's got a lot of layers. But I think one of his layers could be a layer of Eros.
He's got the oistromania, and that's what the Sibyls use. They enter into that state. Sometimes it's portrayed as kind of rapey and aggressive, but they enter that state in order to prophesy. And that's why the Celsus comes along, and he's like, oh, these Christians, I hate them. We don't have a name for them. Right? So what are they? What are they? They're the followers of the way, right? What do we call these?
The Odon.
Yeah, right. What do we call these followers of the way? And they're like, let's call them Sibyllists, because they're oracle mongers. They're always talking about the teachings of the Sibyl and all of that magic. And it's in the Greek. When you read the oracles in the Greek, it says she enters a state of oistromania, right? That's the one who's been Christed. That's the one who's been stung. So you can't have prophecy unless you've got that oistromania.
Is that phrase, the Odon, the way? Is that
Hodos,
using any other? Is that using any other? Hodos, right? Hodos, is that what it is? Okay. Hodos. And then sometimes it's Hodon in a different
case.
So what is that ever used for besides Christianity? Is that used in any other context, like the way? Like, you know how the Tao is called the way. I don't know if the Taoists were in Egypt or not. I know that there was Buddhists in Egypt. What I'm getting at is, was anyone else in this time period in Egypt or Syria calling themselves the way? Yeah,
the Buddhism in the Egyptian, I'll leave that for the people who study those areas.
Therapeutae. They might have called.
I can tell you for a fact, on the Greek side with the Greek magical papyri, we have the way as a form of incantation or an element of incantation. So this is how you enter your inner sanctuary, right? If you are a magus, or believe it or not, if you're an Etruscan haruspex, right? Trained in the lawful arts of divination, right? These guys ultimately give birth to the Stoics.
Well, you know what's strange about that is that, and Kamel, I'm about to get to your super chat next. In 1 second, so we finish this thought. When the Simonians, one of the earliest known Christian groups, followers of Simon of Samaria, Simon Magus, when they set up shop in Rome, late 1st century, early 2nd century. We're talking early on in the game. One of the first groups to be talked about. They take a statue of Simon Sancus, which is a Sabine Etruscan god. This god is not worshipped anywhere else besides Rome, because it's a native Roman Sabine god. And they took this statue because it had the name Simon, I'm guessing, but I could be wrong. Simon sounds like Simon. And they repurposed it for Simon Magus. They were worshiping Simon Magus like as Zeus.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is that this Etruscan lineage gets sort of like connected to the Christian lineage through the Simonians.
Yeah. Your connection is the hill. Remember the Vatican Hill, where the worship of Vaticanus is what is driving the prophetesses, the Wates, the Sibyls, who ultimately produce Roman religion. Right. I mean, you should be smelling. This is the city of 7 hills, man. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, if you notice, the Sybilline oracles get transferred over from paganism to Christianity without anyone batting an eye. The Sybilline oracles are mentioned in the time of Caesar as being pagan. You have your pontiffs, the College of Pontiffs. You have your Vestal Virgins, and they're reading the Sybilline oracles, trying to figure out the ways of the times, trying to find out oracles on what to do during these times. But fast forward 500 years, the Sybilline oracles are still being used, but now it's by the church. Yeah. Now it's by the same College of Pontiffs, but they're Christians now. So that just shows you there's a lot of tradition, a lot of Roman tradition that carries its way into the church. That's never gets taken. Like they don't get rid of their tradition. They keep their tradition. They just convert it into a new religion.
They call it syncretism. I call it thievery. And that's why I was trying to point out the foundation of the Arians. The Arians are that group that declared themselves to be followers of this one queen from Libya, whose name was Medea, or the Medwa. The Etruscans called her Metaia. She brought this mystery religion and created a group of leaders within it that we know as the Magi, who then, without that, you wouldn't have Jesus at all, because it was their selection of him that drove the process. So let's look at those texts. Let's look at the magic text and see what this way is.
Yeah, you want to? You have it. You can share your screen if you want.
Let me just. All these texts. I don't have it sitting. Let
me read this out real quick. Kamal, thank you for the super chat. Can you debunk the Kuzari argument? Jews claim that 3 million Jews heard God speaking to Moses at Mount Sinai, the first 2 commandments. That's what they claim to be the proof for Judaism. To me, this is the same thing as the 500 eyewitnesses for Jesus. I mean, you just got to say, what's your evidence? Oh, you got a guy that says that they heard from someone else who wasn't there. Like, I wasn't there, but I know someone who was there, and they said it happened. Come on. Yeah, I need more than that. You know what I mean? So to me, it's not. To me, I don't think was meant to be taken literally. It's meant to be oracular, like we've been talking about. These are meant to be messages in the text to let you know this is important. We want you to focus on this thing. It came straight from the lips of God himself. So pay attention to what we're about to say. That's what they're saying. That's how religion, if you approach religion that way, you'll never have these problems. You'll never have to question things. But I totally agree that you should be questioning these things. You shouldn't just be accepting it and just drinking the Kool-Aid. I like the question. But my answer to that would be, if you approach this as this is not literal, they're writing this in a certain way because it's oracular. They want you to believe in this. This is what they want you to pay attention to. Then you'll never even it's like you don't even care anymore. You're just reading it for what it is. You're just getting the context for what it is, not like this fake fundamentalist. Oh yeah, this is 100% true because it says so type of context. If that makes sense.
I want to know what drug they were using, which is probably a combo, because all the recipes are combos. And I want to know if, in order to bring the voice of God, if they followed the rules of the time, things the Magi were using, and what kind of compound concoction did they get in order to hear the voice of the God? Because that's the whole purpose of having an oracle, right? It's the whole purpose. When they build that thing, when Moses makes that tent where you got to put a rope on the guy's foot, because sometimes it's overwhelming, right? And they're burning all their incense. Incense, people, is just another way of saying psychotropic botanicals and perfumes in a giant block that you put on a barbecue and fill this tent full of smoke, right? So,
yeah. Or what's the showbread? What's in that? What's the manna? The sacred manna? Right. What the hell is that? Who knows? That could be anything. Yeah. And then the fact that they're making this out of acacia wood, I'm like, someone like people, a lot of people who are into DMT and ayahuasca, they'll point to the fact that the tabernacle, or not the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant was built with acacia wood, and they're like, well, acacia wood is where you get DMT from, the roots, acacia roots. I'm like, all right, that's kind of a stretch, but it's possible.
Well, they're using so many of these drugs that you have to ask and say.
It's a good question to ask, because if you're getting an oracle from God, if you're going into the Holy of Holies and you're selected among one tribe, the Levites, but you're also selected one person out of these group of people to be entrusted to get the oracle from God, you have to think at that point, what is the process to get this person into a state of mind where they're going to hear something that's coming from somewhere else?
You gotta be able. You don't get into that position unless you can turn a stick into a snake.
Exactly. Yeah. What does that mean? Is that literally what it means? No.
I don't know, but Paul is immune to this viper venom that the Bacchants are all, you see on all it's a North African viper, and they're all waving it in the air and getting high and waving this stuff, doing their Bacchant.
Oh, by the way, I'm going to play a clip real quick of somebody doing that in modern times. And let's just say it doesn't end well.
Okay, let's see.
Let me play this clip. Well, actually, while I'm pulling it up, why don't you read the super chat and you can answer it if you want.
Okay, my take. Jesus is Daniel Johnson, the outsider artist recording demos on his boombox. Paul and the later church re-record and master it for AOR radio. Oh, you know what? That is so pessimistic, man. That is super pessimistic.
Sorry about that. Well, wait, let me see this thing. Daniel Johnston, the outsider artist recording demos on his boombox. Paul and the later church re-record and master it for IR radio. Why? What do you mean? That makes sense, because Paul is ultimately corporatizing Christianity and making it sellable for the masses. I think he's right about this.
Okay, so our friend Sobek is saying Paul has got, there's a motive here in the advancement of Paul's work. There's a motive, and it's cash. It's got cash. He's pulled the devil's quandary on us. You know how to tell somebody's really bad in the Middle Ages?
How?
This is the devil's test. Offer them money. See if they want money, right? So is that what's going on? Is there some sort of, it's just you may be right, but Sobek, what are you lord of? The four corners. That's fantastic. Sobek, my question for you.
That's fantastic.
My question for you, Sobek, is where are the four corners, bro?
Hold on, I'm gonna play this clip real quick. Let's get back to that. This is crazy because you're talking about the snakes and Paul. Yeah. So this is what Christians actually believe now, that they can do this. Boom. He still believes.
This man is ruined.
As you can see there.
Oh wow! Okay. Hugely, I'm a big fan of satanic cult. But here's the problem: they didn't do it right. You have to have a priestess who makes the antibody. You have to have somebody who can give you the antidote, which they call the galene. When you're giving the mystery right, you have to have somebody on the other side, which they say they get mostly from prepubertal girls by breastfeeding them. Apparently, the hormones in the venom make for real good medusae. So yeah, that guy, why the hell didn't he have a priestess there whose body had been producing the venom? Because in their Christian tradition, the female is not part of the priesthood, right? I mean, that's just straight up. You know, you don't have to go a long way for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is another thing that I wanted to bring up. Do you think that this wasn't meant to be taken literally? Like, you're not literally supposed to not get bitten by. You're gonna get bit by a snake if you scream in a snake's face for 20 minutes.
Yeah, you're gonna get bitten by.
But in the context for what it's actually saying is, in the world that we live in, nothing would bother you. You'll be proof. You'll have all of your defects will be like, you know, it's sort of a metaphorical for like you'll be fine in this world if you follow these ways. If you follow the way, the hold on, the way of Christ, the Christos, you'll be able to endure scorpions and snake bites. It's talking about the world around you.
Yeah, but they didn't get their satanic roots, because if he was exposed to that poison, if he was exposed to that venom, he would have had an anti-venom present to counteract the symptoms that are very laid out. These ancient authors talk about them, that are laid out. And they called one of these antidotes vinegar, straight up, just called it vinegar, the vinegar. And so you can counter these. So what does that mean? It means his priesthood wasn't capturing the rationalism of late Bronze Age Satanism, which is where Judaism and Christianity and Islam get their roots, right?
The mystery. Sabbath and Saturn are related. And you're not the only person that thinks this is something that people have been asking for a while. That is this a Saturnian? And by the way, Tacitus, I mentioned earlier, brings this up. And Tacitus in book 5. Actually, I want to pull it up so I can just so that people know that this was actually floating. I think Plutarch said something about this as well. Something about Saturn being the ruler of the Jews, which is why Sabbath is a holy day.
Go ahead. Read your blasphemous stuff, please.
Yeah. So Tacitus, book 5. Let's see. We got it right here. He says, I'm going to see if I can pull it up. By the way, thank you for that super sticker, Joanne Kerr. And by the way, I saw a comment from Joanne Kerr. I'm going to read it real quick. It's the Bible is Christianity's attempt to build on Judaism. Total failure, in my opinion. But anyways, Tacitus. Oh, this is the Annals. That's not the one. I'm looking for Histories, book 5. Okay, big difference between the Annals and the Histories. Big difference. So the Histories, he says that. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen so people can see what I'm looking at, just so we're all on the same page here. It's got the Latin lined up right next to the English, so we know that this is legit. You
using the Loeb or something?
I just pulled this up on sacredtext.com. Tacitus book 5. Okay, so Tacitus thinks that these worshippers in Judea. Let's see. Remedy consulted the oracle of Ammon. Okay, Ammon's the one who kicked them out. So they don't like Ammon, they don't like Osiris, but they like the other gods, that the opposites to that, which is where you get the
Dude, wait a minute. Wait, stop right there.
Yeah.
So what kind of cult is Ammon? It's oracular cult, right?
Look. They slay the ram. The Jews slay the ram, which is true. If you look at Deuteronomy, they slay the ram. And the ram is sacred in Egypt. You do not slay a ram in Egypt. Any Egyptologist will tell you this. You don't kill a ram because a ram is a representation of Ammon. The Jews who came out of Egypt were slaying the ram. So they're opposing. So I guess in a satanic sense, they're opposing the Lord of Creator God. Ammon.
Is that what?
This is what the passage is saying.
Is that why Jehovah kicked out his wife?
But look, real quick. Let me just finish this thought, and then we'll get into that.
Go ahead.
But others say that is an observance in honor of Saturn, either from the primitive elements. You can see this, guys, right? Okay, good. Either from the primitive elements of their faith having been transmitted from the idea, which is I don't know if that's true because that's a Cretan tribe, who are said to have shared the flight of that god and have founded the race, or from circumstance that the 7 stars which rule the destinies of men, Saturn moves in the highest orbit. Saturn is the most high. And with the mightiest power, and that many of the heavenly bodies complete the revolutions in courses and multiples of 7. So Tacitus, the same guy who says they worship an ass representation of a donkey, thinks that they worship Saturn in opposition to Ammon, the greatest god of Egypt. Now what do you think about that?
It's a war, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a spiritual warfare. That's what it is.
Yeah. I think the fact that the oracular cults are creating culture should say a lot that we don't even respect. Yeah. What is it about Ammon that they are struggling against?
Because the high priest of Ammon, when the Hittites, or not the Hittites, when the Hyksos got expelled, because they got an oracle from Ammon says get rid of those Hyksos. So they can't worship Ammon after that.
Right.
Why would they do that? He kicked them out of Egypt.
Right.
They're going to go to the opposition, which is Saturn. By the way, Ammon is Jupiter. Jupiter deposes Saturn. So what I guess is they're saying metaphorically is we're worshiping the God who created everything. You guys are worshiping the king of the pagan gods. We're worshiping the God of times, of itself, Saturn, Kronos, the beginning of everything.
Yeah, as they put it, they're worshiping the god of the telesterion. That tent where they met with God, right? That was the same. It's the same word in Greek. It's the same word for the place or location where one breaches the interdimensional gap and is able to be possessed by the god. That is to hear the voice of the god. And the Pythias are doing this. This is Bronze Age stuff.
And by the way, the Phoenicians said that the god Saturn was the god El. L equals Saturn. That's what the Phoenicians, because there's Phoenician Ugaritic myths in which Saturn is called El, but it's the same myth that you get from Ionia or Greece or Hellas, which would be, they call him Cronus. But you get this, what you do is you see the same myth told in a Phoenician tongue, but they're calling Cronus El.
It's why it's the exact same reason Jesus calls himself the morning star. Right?
Yeah.
There is a power of attribution behind the image. So El has a very specific nature to him, image to him, right? It's all magic, right? That's why you need 3 of these things, 3 of these images put into one aditone, put into one sacred place. I mean, what are you doing here, Neil? You are making the sacred profane. You're giving it all out to these people. They don't have ears to hear this. I didn't authorize this. My demonic agents didn't authorize it, right? What are you what do you do if you're going to fly a flag of the Confederacy, right? Yeah. Wow. So calls himself the Morning Star. So Ammon, so back to your origins of the Jewish religion. You realize it is an oracular religion, though, right? It's using all the same machinery,
right,
to produce what they say are the same effects, right? You got the Egyptians with their snakes and their poles, and then you got the Jews with their snakes and their poles. And one of them saying, hold up this pole with snake. And the other side, on the other side, the GNC, they're holding up a pole with snakes wandering around it saying, I'm high and I see the divinity. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think where are you going to go?
Why do you not understand what I say? It's because you are not able to hear my word. Your father is the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. From the beginning, he was a murderer and has not stood in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks from what he is, for he is a liar and the father of it. What is he talking about? He's talking about this. So the Gnostics would interpret this. I shouldn't say the Gnostics, the Marcionites, because not all the Gnostics thought that Yahweh was the evil creator. The Marcionites did, and they thought that this was proof that they can point to and say, look, Jesus was opposing the God of the Jews. He said their God is the devil. So this is where you get the dualism, the darkness and the lightness, and you get Set versus Osiris. But in this context, it's now Satan versus Jesus. So that's where you get it all kind of ties into each other. But like that's where they get their idea from.
Why is Jesus? See, this is what bothers me. Why is Jesus then getting charges of being a Satanist, right? Literally, they say he's casting out demons in the name of Beelzebul. Now that name
Beelzebul, the opponent is always Satan. No matter what side you're on, the other side is Satan.
No, but what if the charge is correct? That's what I'm saying, Neil. They said he's casting out demons by Beelzebul. Okay. In the Greek text, that Zebul is just the za, the intensifier, plus the bul. We get it the same root in Sibule. And we're explained, different classical authors explain to us the origin of this name Sibul. It's the council of the gods, right? Sibule, right? That's what it is. But who is Beelzebub? He's Baal's excellent or exalted counsel. So he's the one who receives. I mean, it's typical. Jesus would have a hard time defending himself in a court of law today. He would have a hard time because he's using the language. He's actually performing the acts.
And then you get the secret mark thing, what we talked about before, where he gets arrested in the garden at 4 a.m. with a little boy with a towel around him. So if you look at the Talmud, when it talks about his case, it says he was practicing idolatry, leading Israel astray, which that could be what the charges. That little boy that he was with, leading him astray, teaching him all these mysterious Egyptian stuff.
Who else is the morning?
I'm guessing here, but this could be what happened.
Who else is the morning star? The
Lucifer.
devil. The devil, Lucifer, right? So why is Jesus taking on look, the dude takes on these titles. He's with the naked kid out in the cemetery. Why is it a cemetery? Because that's where you perform necromancy. Right?
Wow. And then you get the Lazarus thing happening right before that too.
Yeah, no. And we found out it's the same location. And yeah, but what's he doing in a cemetery? Yeah. Saint Cyprian comes out of a cemetery caught at night, but he has 2 prostitutes with him, and it says that there's viper venom drooling out of his butt.
That's from Saint Cyprian? Where do you read this stuff?
He had to apologize. I'll send you the reference. He had to apologize. I think that was Augustine, because was it Augustine? I can't remember.
Oh yeah, one of the other church fathers was writing about how bad. I know what you're talking about now, but they were doing some weird stuff. I mean, we're talking about a world that was like the game Skyrim or Lord of the Rings. Like, people thought there were spirits everywhere. They didn't understand science yet. Everything was a spirit. Everything was attached to either God or the Satan or an angel or a daemon. So this is a world that is way different than what we think today. And
is it that they didn't understand, or is it that they understood the quantum reality better than we did? And before you answer, if you can figure out how to make an antidote through a person's body to a venom, you let me know, because I'm willing to bet nobody around today can do that.
Yeah, if you're living out in nature, in the mountains, in the hills, and you're setting up these little, tepes or whatever you call them, these hill civilizations, and you're hunting and gathering all day, and that's what you're focused on. You're still a Homo sapien, okay? You still have the same brain power as we have today, but you don't have the technology around you, so you're going to focus your energies on other things, and that's why they got so advanced in other things that we suck at today. So that explains that to me.
You don't think, though, Neil, that Medea, the queen of the people called the Medes, who were originally Aryans, you think in the late Bronze Age she was living in a fucking treetop village on some hill somewhere?
No, she had a nice built wooden structure, probably with a stone foundation, because she was rich. Most people didn't have that, though.
They had people brought in who were convicted that they could experiment on. And that was supposedly what it's reported, what Circe and Aeetes were into, was using the drugs on the people to see what kind of reactions they get and how they can.
Oh, Cleopatra. I was just reading Cleopatra's from Plutarch. It's not Cleopatra. It's about Mark Antony.
Oh, okay.
Plutarch writes a book about Mark Antony, but at the end of the book, he talks about how Cleopatra, after they lost the war in Actium, all faith was lost in empire. She wanted to build a whole entire empire, starting from Egypt and like setting up her kids, Selene, which means the moon, Helios in Armenia, Selene in Libya, and their other son, which was Ptolemy Philadelphus, named after the other Ptolemy Philadelphus, to rule Judea. Anyways, they were setting up an entire empire. All they had to do was defeat Octavian, who became Augustus.
Right.
They lose that war. So what does she do? She changes her plans from conquering the world to starting a death cult. I'm not even kidding. They had a name. There's a name for it. It was like the cult of death or something. And the idea was people in Egypt, it would bring two couples together who wanted to die, and they would go there, and she was testing out different venoms and plants and whatever you want to call it, like hemlocks and all this stuff. She was testing them out on people to see which one was the easiest, the best way to die, give you a drowsy sleeping effect with no pain. And then they found this ASP. That was the best way. So that she literally was testing it out on people. And like some people were going through horrible experiences, taking 6 hours to die. Some people were just dying right away. But she was doing some sadistic, weird death cult shit before they. And that was in her last couple of years. Mark Antony ends up tricking Mark Antony into killing himself. He thought that she died, but she didn't. So he kills himself, and then she gives his body over to Octavian and gives herself up that way. But yeah.
Now you know why. Now you know why Nero wants the works on the antidotes collected from famous creators of Theriac.
Right. By the way, I've had this super chat up for like 20 minutes. Let me read it real quick. Sorry. Constantine and Cisco. Josephus created a sync of all Roman world gods, prophets, oracles to make Jesus for the Emperor Titus. Check out the YouTube video. Yahweh is a dragon. It's a lot in there right there. Yeah, I don't know about him being Emperor Titus. What I think about the Emperor Titus thing is I think Christians interpreted that as Titus working as the hand of God. So Jesus predicts the temple falling in 70 AD, and Titus is the one who's going to do it. So he's a major part of God's plan in that way. Do I think that everything that's in the Gospels is based on the things Titus did? No, I don't. I think I've looked into that before, and it didn't line up at all. Because you hear that from the Caesar's Messiah video, Joseph Atwell, and maybe I'm not, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if he can come on here one day and show me what he sees that I'm not seeing, And I'm 100% open for this. I just haven't seen it yet. I'm actually trying to see it, but I can't see it yet. The Yahweh is a dragon thing is interesting.
That's what I would ask about. I would ask, what is a dragon? And what is a dragon within the Orphic context? They're temple guardians, right? You got one stationed in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
So she doesn't get her eyes open. Oh, but that's
you ever wonder that? What if they thought that? Let me see if I have a picture. I might have a picture. I might not. Okay,
they're really attached to the priesthood.
So you know how you look up at the Milky Way at night and you see that giant line in the sky? It looks like a giant serpent.
Nice.
You almost have to wonder. They looked up at the sky at night and thought that was God and that was a dragon.
Yeah.
You never know.
Hera's milk, baby. What do you think comes out of Hera's milk? It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
That's what they said it was. Yeah.
It caused Aeschylus to run away from the mob that wanted to kill him for revealing the Eleusinian mysteries. Hey, the dragon, Jehovah turned into a dragon. Yeah, Jove did. Zeus did. And when he did, he raped Persephone. Right? Guess what? Guess what? You know, it's same mystery, bro. Same mystery.
Yeah. No, you're right. There's something to that dragon thing that we should look into. Jennifer Silves. Am I saying that right? Silves. Yahweh divorced his wife because she called the snake to free Adam and his woman. Yeah.
Yahweh, first of all, I'd love to see the text, right? Like, where is that? Or what? Give me some.
Asherah. No, she's talking about straight archaeology right now.
Yeah, Jennifer, give me.
If you say ignore the text,
yeah.
Let's look at archaeology. God has a wife, and that's Asherah.
Yeah,
and you can see it. You can see it all over the archeology.
Right.
That's what I guess is. If you want to leave a comment on what, and is that what you mean by that? We'd love to see that too. But I think she's right. Asherah literally means wife in Hebrew too.
Yeah. So why did she stay with him when they moved to Greece? Does that say something about climate? Maybe, you know, Jupiter or Zeus or Jove or Jehovah, they kept their wives only in certain places. They do in Italy and Greece. I don't know why you see spats between them and you see casting out and coming back. And
well, I think that's because you're talking about the pantheon. The pantheons are all coming from a source, like an ancient religion source, like an ancient paganism that was like universal. But as they go into their local cults, they branch out and they change, and one of them becomes monotheistic, the other one becomes pantheistic, the other one becomes traditional pantheon. If that makes sense, but.
You gotta have evidence though, and we don't
have the language.
We don't have the evidence. So as long as we don't have the evidence, we're guessing.
Yeah, no, I admit that. I'm guessing.
What we do have, fortunately on the Greek side, is stuff that came filtered through the 9th centuries and afterwards, and that stuff is chock full of great resources. So from that evidence, can you say it was a satanic? What do you think, Neil, when I say that Judaism, Christianity are offshoots of late Bronze Age Satanism? So you can see you can see this through the oracular mystery. If you just study the oracular mystery and how oracular cults practice, what they write about, what kind of instruments they use. On the medical side, I did the drugs that they were using, right? So if you can just follow that, you can get a real.
Yeah, the way they do their sacrifices, the way they offer up they sprinkle the blood, all that stuff, you can see the commonalities among different religions in different parts of the world. And those are the most ancient ways of doing religion. And then you have a new wave of religion that sort of cancels that out for like, let's instead of having a sacrifice, we have Jesus as a sacrifice, or we have a eternal fire or something like Zoroastrians do. So they sort of weed out the primitive sacrificial stuff for like a new different type, a symbolic version of it. But if you go back far enough, you'll get human sacrifice.
Yeah.
So that's the two different directions you go in, past and future.
Or if you don't get human, you can still not get a human sacrifice. They outlawed that a long time in Alexandria when the Romans came in and started busting them for raping boys. the orphan boys. What are the common elements of all this mystery religion, and how does it work? Yeah, that's why I want to ask you the Satanism.
Well, Robert Herring, speaking of Satan, Robert Herring says God gives some credit. He has some killer music. Pseudo Celis, thanks for the $5. Says, for my thoughts, check my vid on curing his senses. Luke made it up. Wow. Check that out, guys. Here you go.
If you got evidence for that, we gotta have evidence, bro.
Check that out.
We got to follow the way of reason, right? We got to.
Yeah. So let's see. We got a couple more. Let's get through these real quick. Okay, Jennifer Silvas again. I think the word for field, shade in Hebrew, is her actual name. It's in my initial super chats. I saw those, but I couldn't get to them. I can't pull them up for some reason. So they disappeared or so. I don't know. But yeah, so this is good. It's in my initial super chats. It was actual journeying work through. Interesting.
Yeah.
Shade. It's interesting. That's something I want to look into now.
That was the name of my TA at Berkeley when I took their intensive Greek course. Shadi. Shout out to Shadi. Nice to be reminded
her if she left. That's what he says about her not being able to leave. He'd kill her if she left. Yeah. What do you think about Sophia? Maybe Sophia and Asherah are tied together. Sophia being the first formed, the one who formed Adam. It's according to Proverbs 8. Sophia is not Yahweh, but Sophia creates Adam. So wisdom incarnate, which is the goddess.
Which Bible are you talking about? Are you talking about the Masoretic Bible or through King James, or are you talking about the
Septuagint or both of them? And both versions.
That's not what it says in Septuagint. But
what does it say?
It says Adam was put into ecstasy, baby.
Really?
And that Eve was his boethos. You know what that is? No. That's she who holds the 7 stars. Within the Magi, right? He made her he appointed her his leader, his guide. So the one with the shout. Literally, it's somebody who comes up next to you in the middle of a battle and then pushes you and the force of the battle forward, right? With their power. It's
Proverbs 8, though, regardless of what we think it means, Proverbs 8 shows that there's a goddess involved. This is not just one. She's literally saying in Proverbs 8, I'll share my screen real quick. This is the NIV, but whatever, just to show it off, just so people can read it. I wisdom, okay? So this would say in Hebrew, I chakma, how do you say it? Or in Greek, it would say, I Sophia, dwell together with prudence. I possess now. This is a person talking. Think about this for a second. To fear the Lord is to hate evil. That's someone else. This would say Yahweh in Hebrew, or it would say Adonai. Is it Adonai in Greek?
What does
it say in Greek? Curios. I'm sorry. I hate pride and ignorance, evil behavior.
Wait, Neil. Who is your author here? Who's writing this?
Sophia.
Okay, no, but who is the author of Proverbs?
There's a bunch of different authors here.
Okay, no, but who does the text say is the author, right? It's supposed to be Solomon, right?
Yeah.
Who's the Magus? Who's the Magus in the group? Yeah, he is. Remember, he's got all that stuff that he's doing to build the temple, and you have to have quantum magic to do that kind of stuff. In order to charge an aditon, you know what that takes? It takes a lot. Ask the Romans who had to import that stuff, that power from the East, right?
You're probably right.
But go ahead, proceed. I'm sorry.
No, that was good. No, you're right. That is Solomon was doing something, man. And by the way, what does Solomon wish for? He can have anything in the world. He wants wisdom.
He probably wants more wives.
Yeah, he had enough of those, I think.
No, why? Why does the man have so many wives?
I don't know. It's one of those weird things that make you wonder what the hell's going on with that.
You're the one who brought up Eros.
Wait a minute. We got a test here for myself because you've been teaching me Greek. So let me see if I can read this. Kai Trita telemai.
He's trying to say, on the third day, I'm finished, right? I'm completed. But he's using telos.
Below.
He's using telos, which is Lord Sobek. Is this Lord Sobek from the full course?
Yeah.
Lord Sobek is using the verb teleo to finish something off. And this is what the mystagogues, remember those mystagogues we were talking about? This is what they're doing. They're going to the telesterion, right? And they're finishing off the project, right? So if that means the boy has to be naked, Hercules, thank you very much, then that's what we'll do. Thank you, Lord Sobek.
He says, just wondering your thoughts on this passage from Luke in regards to esotericism. What passage are you talking about?
In regards to esotericism, which passage is it?
I think he's going to pull it up in a second.
Lord Sobek's doing some textual work.
I wonder if Luke really is written in. M. David Libba thinks Luke is written in the 140s.
Lord Sobek.
Oh, here it is. Luke 13:32.
Okay, where is it? Here. I'll look it up. I thought you were going to bring a text up, you lazy Lord Sobek. Let me see.
I got it right here.
1832.
Here it is.
Yeah, you find it your place. I'll find it in the Greek because I want to verify Greek.
It says, but Jesus replied, go tell that fox, look, I will keep driving out demons and healing people today and tomorrow and on the third day, and I will reach my goal. What do you think that means, dude? That's some deep stuff. He says, tell that fox, Herod. Like that sounds like some gangster talking right there. Tell that fox to F off. I'm going to do my thing. Right? That's what Jesus sounds like in that passage right there. If am I the only one who thinks that?
That's what the translator wants you to think. I think you captured the spirit of the translation.
Yeah, go tell that fox. I'm going to drive out demons. I'm riding for mine. That's what it sounds like, though. It sounds like he's really like on some like I'm the man, you're not. Tell that fox to get the hell out of my territory. This is my territory, and what I say goes, and what you say is nothing. Zit Popper, thank you for the $1. Appreciate that.
I'm bringing up the Greek right now because I want to confirm.
I want it because the question
I don't trust translations, but tell me, Salome, was there a connection with Salome in there somewhere and all that dancing? Yeah,
yeah. What do you mean Salome? What are you talking about?
Yeah. Good translation so far. Idu ekbalo daimonia. Yeah, good. Daimonia. He could have used daimonia. He could have used another form for demon, but okay. That gives it a little bit of date-wise. This is smacking to me of post-Ptolemaic demonology, just mixed in with a little bit of iamblichus. Yeah, this is like.
Well, yeah.
Wait. Apostello, semeron kai aurum. Oh, that's nice. Ke trite teleomai. Yeah. Lord Sobek, those are awfully culty terms that are being employed within the Greek. Okay. And yeah. I would expect this from a magus. That's what I would say. As a classicist, as I was reading this, I would say, I expect that this is the kind of stuff that you'd see a magus put into a magus's speech. Like if Tacitus wanted to write about there's some magus and he said this is the kind of language you would put in.
Is that what the text that Sobek has up there is go tell that fox? Is that what that means? Teliame.
Yeah, alopeki. Yeah, sure.
Kaite trite telemai.
Alopex. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, your translation is fine. I like your translation, but your translation can't pick out the significance of daimonia, right? Nor can it pick out
a daemon was a good thing in the Platonic Greek world.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Challenger.
Right.
So what? Give us your theories, man, on what's on any of this stuff. You're muted. I'm trying to unmute you, but it's not working.
Yeah.
There it goes.
How you doing? You might be familiar with me.
Oh yeah, I've seen you around. Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, no problem. How you doing? Quick question. I saw your title. It says Sabbath stream. What do you mean by that?
Well, today's Saturday.
But are you talking about the Hebrew Sabbath?
It's the Sabbath. That's the seventh. That's the seventh. That's what that means.
It's the day that we enter into the worship of Sabbath, baby, or in Greek we say Sabbadzo.
Sabbatzos would be the Phrygian god. But yeah,
no, but if you're referring to the 7-day Sabbath, which is today, you're specifically and exclusively talking about the Hebrew Sabbath. Now, if you guys are speaking like pagans, so if you're talking about the pagan Sabbath, that you would have to count that from the new moon, because that's where the other Sabbaths come into play. The Sumerian Sabbath, the Babylonian Sabbath, all the other Sabbath, it starts from a new moon. So when you're saying the 7-day Sabbath, you're saying Jesus Christ is Lord over you.
Sir.
By saying that, you're basically saying that Jesus is Lord over you, but he's already Lord over you, but you're recognizing his lordship over you.
Okay,
if that's how you see it, then
as a Satanist,
logically,
as a Satanist who worship on the 7th day of Saturn, that's the day that was held long before Jesus was ever around as our day to Sabbath Zeus, to worship the god of Sabbath. So
yeah, you have no
predates Jesus by 900 years.
Yeah, here's the thing. This is my area of expertise. I'm going to be debating Pat Lowinger next month. Well,
good luck.
Give me some text. Give me some text.
Wait. I'm sorry. What did you say?
Let him talk. Let him talk.
Now, what did you say, Gnostic, about Pat?
I said, good luck debating Pat. Pat knows.
Don't worry. It's gonna be easy. It's gonna be easy for me.
So let me ask you this: why did Christians change the holy day to Sunday?
Because they're not really Christian. They're they're under the authority of the papacy, and that's also established in Scripture that people would try to undermine the lordship of Jesus Christ. Because
Babylon, you're talking about the Babylon thing.
I'm talking about trying to change laws, times and laws. That's in Daniel 7, if I'm not mistaken. The Antichrist will try to change times and laws, and the only law that relates to time is the Sabbath. So
do you believe that Daniel was written in Hebrew?
No. Before we go to Daniel, I would like to address your last objection, suggesting that the 7-day Sabbath, the 7-day cycle, is exclusive to the Hebrew scriptures. So you cannot refer me to any.
It's not exclusive.
Refer me to any primary ancient source, which I've debated this already multiple times. So I'm gonna see if you could do better. Provide me any ancient primary source that makes reference to a 7-day recurrent cycle. I'm not talking about counting from the new moon. If you're counting from the new moon, that's the pagan things that your witchcraft and stuff is aligned with, but not the 7-day Sabbath, the recurrent Sabbath. So give me any manuscript, and we could look it up right now.
I'm not making that argument though.
Oh no, I'm talking about Mr. David here, because he said the 7-day Sabbath is associated to witchcraft way before Christianity. I'm saying I could go back at least 800 years BC and establish that the 7-day cycle is Hebraic.
Yeah.
You can go further than that and show me any manuscript, any source that says a recurrent 7-day cycle.
Go to John Littus in his untranslated book on months, and John Littus will trace the history of Saturnus.
Wait. What about the Sumerians and Babylonians? Didn't they have a 7-day week?
No, that's what I'm going to be debating Pat Lowinger, and what I've done multiple times. They kept a lunar cycle, which is not a recurrent 7-day cycle. And actually, when I had a conversation with Pat recently on Atheist Rage, he choked because he thought I didn't know this information. He tried to suggest that the Babylonians kept a recurrent 7-day cycle, and I said no, they would add an extra day.
Because you can't fit a 12 lunar cycle into a year. You have to add extra days at the end of the year.
No, I'm not talking about months here. I'm talking about because they would start counting their days from the new moon. Okay. So, and a lunar cycle is 29.5 days, so it would never even out. So I told him the Babylonians and Sumerians kept the last week would add an extra 1 or 2 days. So they had 3 weeks of 7 days, and they would have the last week 8 or 9 days. So I told him that, and he tried to say the Hebrews did the same thing, which is quite two big errors here. He tried to suggest it was a recurrent 7-day cycle for the Babylonians and the Sumerians, and then he rescinded and he agreed on that. And number 2, he tried to suggest that the Hebrews were doing the same thing, which is certainly not the case.
Well, why would the Hebrews adopt the same months like Tammuz, which is a Babylonian god?
That's a good question. Here's the issue, because I'm going to be using that for my debate against Pat, because I know that's exactly what he's going to try to do. There's no Tammuz in the Bible. That's as far as I'm going to say on this channel. There's no Tammuz.
Ezekiel.
Huh? No, not a month of Tammuz. There's no month of Tammuz. The word Tammuz is only used once in the Hebrew scriptures, and it has nothing to do with a month.
Okay, but
so already there, you could use your deductive reasoning.
Neil just provided you evidence that it does exist, and you said no, but it's not for this name of this month, right? So you're
Tammuz is a false god. Tammuz
philology, is that really good philology? And when you say Hebrew text, you're talking about the Masoretic text from the 10th century, correct?
It doesn't matter. It's relevant to the case. It's irrelevant to the case.
Oh, but you did ask though. You did ask.
No, Gnostic. You're the one making the claim. Wait, Gnostic.
Written by nationalists.
One person talking at a time.
Who denied the ancient argument through Julius Africanus that Hebrew was not the original language of the Septuagint.
You're going to a different point. I'm going to what Gnostic was saying.
Focus on this one thing at a time.
Okay. Gnostic. I just like to, because the original language, all of this, I'm not even going to argue that, even though I don't believe what he said is true.
Evidence. Okay.
No, here's my issue. Here's the issue I'm trying to bring. You're appealing to the scriptures to say that the month of Tammuz was something that was Babylonian. I believe, I agree with you. It is a Babylonian name of a deity. The point I'm just trying to establish to you is that the word Tammuz in scripture has nothing to do with a month. It recognizes it as a god, a false god. The Hebrew scripture says this is the false god Tammuz that my people Israel was sacrificing.
The reaping over Tammuz is an abomination. Okay,
exactly. So it's not a month. No, but it was influenced on the Talmudic Babylonian calendar, which again I don't want to go too deep because I know what Pat is going to be saying. So I want to, you know.
Well, to answer that, I'd have to look into it. I don't have it at the top of my head.
No problem.
Correct. And look, I hope you guys have a great debate, and I hope there's a lot of people watch it and learn from it. Yeah, and you know, I wish the best, man. I appreciate you coming on, and this is fun.
Before I let you go, just try to rephrase your title because I know you're not a Christian. So as soon as you said Sabbath, and you didn't count from the new moon, what you just did is recognize Jesus as your sovereign over you.
Why was Jesus arrested with a naked boy? Why was Jesus arrested with a naked boy? Just tell me.
Come on.
I don't even know what that means. But good luck to you.
Bible. It's Mark 14:51-52.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, forget the pedophiles. Yeah, right. Let them go.
Tangelo, nice drop by. You're one of the known what do you call it? Opponents of critical biblical studies. I think
I am on the critical side.
Yeah. So what's going on? What do you got for us?
Well, I suppose you are on the critical side and believe that there are reasons to reject the Bible as authority, right?
I can't. Is your mic on right now? It's very hard to hear you. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to. Is it? Do you have a different mic or no? Is that? Oh,
is it better now?
Yeah, that's better now. Yeah. Okay. Would you say that again?
Yeah. First, I would like to know your position, which I don't know.
Position on what exactly?
Well, is your focus the Bible? Is it just general atheism? What do you stand for?
Truth.
Okay, so you want to know the truth in regards of metaphysics, in regards
to
context.
Origins. I like to know the true context. I like to know. I'm not just trying to be on team atheism. I'm trying to find out what these people meant when they wrote these things. For example, I'll give you an example. Inspiring Philosophy made a video yesterday about the verse in Joshua that the sun did not actually stand still and the earth didn't actually stand still, but this was an oracular verse, an oracle when the moon, when there's a new moon and an old moon and a sun at the same time. I forgot what he's something along those lines. I love that he approaches it that way. He's finding the original context of what these writers were trying to say. So I approach it like that.
Right. So, how do you stand in regards of worldviews or relate? What do you believe, actually? What do you positively believe in regards of origins in our existence?
Well, I'm I mean I'm not opposed to like a deism, like that something created everything, but I just don't see evidence that there is a theism that is influencing the everyday activities of you and I. So something could have started off this universe. I'm fine to grant that, but I think that there's a natural unfolding evolution, if you will, of how everything plays out.
I think that belief in deism is as much worth as atheism because you are not going to try to find out what the identity
Why
is.
should I?
Well, I mean, has something changed in your life based on the fact that you eventually acknowledge that the creator has created the physical
I don't
universe?
I don't know that. I just I can't say either way. So I'm open to it, but I'm not going to be dogmatic either way, and I don't have any. So for example, God can show up in my room right now and tell me what he wants me to believe, but he doesn't do that. Instead, I got people.
Right.
Instead, I have pastors in different faiths and different religions. I have people that are saying, "Come over here, give me your money. We have the truth," and then all of those have real sketchy, dirty backgrounds. There's no, and you look at the history of the church, losing 4 crusades. You look at the history of Islam. There's some stuff going on. None of these religions look like there's a God behind them. They all look like natural, man-made foundations. So what I look at is I look at these individual texts individually. And I try to see where the context, what do these people actually mean when they wrote these things?
Okay, so I have basically 2 approaches which I use. And I see that you are not sure if a creator explains our existence better than no creator. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have it. I'm not an expert in that. So I would just be open to hearing different people on their approach to this.
Are you, can I just ask, I hate to interject, but can I just ask, are you reading from notes? Is this like something that you're supposed to say to people? Or do you have two ways for us to go? Because it looked like you're trying to get something over like part
That's fine.
of it.
I'll answer everything. I'll answer everything honestly. I don't care.
I'm just saying, if I am quoting a text from somewhere, then I inform, listen, I'll quote from this text here.
No,
so
if
I'm not saying that, then
continue.
It's just what is in my mind. Okay?
Let's get to the bottom of what you're trying to get at. So yeah, I just said I don't have a dogmatic view either way. I don't see evidence of the Christian God, but I also don't know that it's impossible that there couldn't be a deist that sparked everything in motion, and we're here today because of that. I'm open to both.
Okay, so what you, as a basic issue, want to find out is if a creator explains our existence better than no creator. I think at that stage, the identity of that creator is not the priority.
Let's say I grant that. Let's say I grant that. I would. Let's say I agree. Actually,
yes, but you don't, right?
Cross off the let's say. I agree. A creator explains why everything's here. Okay, show me why that a creator is Christianity.
Well, I mean, for me, and if you have followed what I have said, the best proof or evidence for Christ, for the historicity and resurrection, is the Shroud of Turin.
Is the Shroud of Turin the one that's found in Europe in the Middle Ages?
Well, we have a long history pre-1350 of the Shroud of Turin.
Wait, hold on. Where do you see a shroud of anyone else in history? Was there a shroud of Julius Caesar? Is there a shroud of the Buddha? Is there a shroud of someone else? What is a shroud? Is there a shroud of your grandmother?
The shroud is a burial cloth, which is claimed that it was enveloped on Jesus.
I know what it's claimed to be, but why would there be a shroud of Jesus when there's no shroud of anyone else? It has to be only a shroud of the one guy that people are trying to make you believe in, and it comes from the one place where there happens to be a bunch of really intense theologian activity happening. Does that not get a little suspicious to you?
Well, first of all, there were obviously burial practices in the first century. There is no doubt that they used to bury the dead the way that Jesus was buried. And we have the reports in the Gospels that Jesus was his hands and feet were bound with sticks, and in the Synoptic Gospels we have the report that he was enveloped in a linen cloth. So we have reports of that.
So why would that turn into a shroud with his picture on it of looking like a 55-year-old German man when he was a 33-year-old Semitic man?
Well, obviously, as a man who was tortured previously, he wouldn't look like a young fit man, but he had all the signs of the torture. At least that is what we see on the shroud. And
yeah, but this is all in hindsight. This is all there. You can read the gospel and say, "Oh, he got tortured. Let's create a Turin that looks like he was tortured," and it just looks like a Frankish man with straight hair. It looks like a German guy. It looks like a European guy.
Would it be fair to ask, why don't we have the shroud of that, or that wrap, the linen wrap that was on that kid's balls that was arrested with Jesus in Gethsemane?
That's a dumb question. Anyways, but okay, shroud of Turin. So what is the carbon dated say about it?
They carbon dated it in the 1260 to 1390, but we have science reports which say that they actually carbon dated a part of the shroud which was fixed in the Middle Ages in the 16th century.
So you have a shroud, you have a bunch of shrouds being made in the 13th century, all around the same time as this shroud supposedly is carbon dated to. And you don't think that it's just a part of a process of other shrouds that were made around the same time, all in Europe, just happened to be kind of a fad at the time. And you don't think that it has something to do with that?
Well, have you actually studied the shroud and how probably the image was made? Have you read any peer-reviewed science paper on that subject?
A science paper on the subject?
Yeah.
So you think there's a science paper on the subject that says that this shroud is really Jesus Christ?
Yes, there are. There are several. I mean, the shroud is the most scientifically investigated.
Investigated doesn't mean proven.
No, we don't have, in science you don't have proofs. You have proofs in mathematics.
Right, but if something's investigated, doesn't make it proof. Doesn't make it true. Like,
are you looking for proofs, or are you looking for evidence?
Christ, for example, the movie Case of Christ compares the manuscript evidence of the Gospels to the manuscript evidence of Homer's Iliad. Which, why would there be more Iliads in the Gospels when we had a church dominating all of libraries for 1,500 years? It's like such a fallacy that it makes you scratch your head at why people even believe it. So the same thing happening here. Oh, it's investigated more than anything else. So how does that make it plausible? That's what I'm asking. It gets investigated more than anyone else? That makes it true?
I didn't say that. Did I say that?
All right. So what are you saying then?
Well, you said that you suppose that it is a forgery from the Middle Ages, from the 13th century.
Absolutely.
So my question is to you, how was the image made on the shroud?
How was the image made? Just like all the other shrouds were made in the 13th century.
Yes, how was it made? How did the forger make the image?
So you get a cloth and you probably do some sort of method that would cause there to be an image on there. I don't know. I never made one, so I wouldn't know. The fact that if I don't know how one's made, it doesn't mean that, if I don't know how one's made, then it must have been real. Like, do you understand how there's a big leap from leaping over a cliff there? I don't know how they made it to that means it's real. Like, how do you get in between? What's the in between there? I don't understand is that not, do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I understand.
Well, all the other shrouds that you think are fake, how were those made? Because you know there's more than one shroud, right?
Yes, there are other shrouds.
How were those other shrouds made?
Well, I don't know how the other shrouds were made.
How come those ones aren't real then?
Well, they have done in 1978 during 1 week, the team they have made investigation to try to find out how the image on the shroud was made. And what they did to discover is that it is not a painting, it is not a chemical process, but I can quote you here what they suspect or what they think actually happened. Let me quote you here what the result is. It was not made by a natural chemical process. It has been confirmed that the image is the result of oxidation, dehydration, and conjugation of the fibers of the shroud themselves. It is like the image areas on the shroud suddenly rapidly age compared to the rest of the shroud.
Sure, fine. I agree. I'm fine with all that. So where was the shroud before it was discovered?
I can give you a link to a science paper from which reports the entire history pre-1350. You can put it in the side chat, and then you can look it up and study if the topic interests you.
Yeah, I
But
would love
there
to
is a
see
long
that. I would love to
history.
see that. And I'll admit
Sure.
I never looked into that yet, so I want to look into that first, and maybe we can revisit this after I look into it. We can talk about this again.
Sure.
Bring a better mic next time. This mic is terrible, dude. You sound like I could barely hear you, but thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it.
Let me give you the link, and then you can move on.
Yeah, put
okay?
the link. Please put the link in there. I'll check it out. And then, but I don't know if you have a better mic or not. But next time, definitely come with the better mic. All right, there, Angelo. Angelo.
Okay.
All right, I got another person jumping in, so I really
Wait,
appreciate.
can I ask you a question just real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Would that linen wrap that was on the little boy's private parts that was with Jesus in Gethsemane, would that have left an impression?
He didn't want to answer that. Anyways, Eric.
Why does nobody want to talk about this?
No one wants to talk about the linen wrap because it's a weird mystery. Sultron, I'm just going to read this real quick before I get to you, Eric, real quick. The Shroud of Turin, aka the image of Edessa, is the Holy Grail in the New Test. It's based on this image. Watch the Shroud of Turin playlist YouTube channel. Okay, there. Thank you for that. It's $20. I appreciate that. I will check it out. Like I said, I'm interested in all this stuff. I'm going to be fair with you guys. If something's real, it's real. But I'm just saying, don't expect me to like jump over cliffs and commit logical fallacies just to make something true. That's all I'm saying. How you doing, Eric?
Are y'all able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, so I'm actually I'm a double major in anthropology and religious studies at ASU, and specifically I'm focused on the First Temple Israelite period. And recently I wrote a 20-page paper on the relationship between Asherah, the tree of life, what else? The concept of the Shekhinah, or like the divine presence of God. And interestingly, I found like a lot of interesting references that, like, I listening to you for a while, I've kind of thought that maybe some of these things, like, oh, maybe that's just like a trend or a pattern that, that people can notice. But then I found like actual references where it refers, so there's like a commentary on, I forget exactly what it is, but and I can send you the resources to this later, but where it refers to Asherah Shekhinati, and there's this double meaning there where it could be Asherah, my Shekhinah, or my presence. But on the other hand, so I was asking a rabbi about this, and they told me that, so I mean, they weren't looking at it that way, but that the way they looked at it is, so there's a root shara, which means to appoint or to place. And so Asherah Shekhinati could be a double meaning, that Asherah, my Shekhinah, but it could also be, I will place my presence in the temple or in the tabernacle. And I don't know, I found it so interesting because there's this whole realm of, research and study that it seems like a lot of it is really relegated to Hebrew, and like it still needs to be translated or studied within that context.
Wow.
Can I ask the first question? I'm sorry. Is there any reason stated in the Jewish tradition that she was, and I'm talking about Hebrew, that she was kicked out? Is there any reason for that?
So from everything that I found, it has a lot to do with the cult of Yahweh and the centralization period under King, I think, Josiah. and he was basically groomed to rule by, I think it was the high priest Hilkiah. I'm kind of rusty on this stuff, but the everything I've seen shows that the reason that the goddess was kicked out of the temple or out of the garden, if you believe that the temple was also the garden, it probably has to do more with politics than anything else. But going to the find at Tel Arad, where they found not a destroyed, but like a covered up shrine. They found the larger and the smaller one, and on that they also found, so on the larger one, which probably was in reference to Yahweh, they found frankincense, like the chemical remnants from that, and on the smaller one they found cannabis residuals, which kind of goes along with this also because the Asherah being described as the tree of life, the descriptions of the tree of life, one of the reasons why people think it might be an almond tree is because it gets described similarly with the staff of Aaron. It gets described as what is it, like a stalk shooting forth like almond blossoms. But I looked into this, and that might actually be a result of how it gets how it gets vocalized, or like the vowels that got assigned to it as a result of the Masoretic tradition, because the difference between almond and almond shaped, it wouldn't be spelled any differently. It would just be like vocalized differently. So almond is shaked and almond shaped is shekhed. And so with this, it could be that the almond shaped blossom, or that the almond blossoms are actually almond shaped blossoms. Wow. And so if you look at the depictions of the Kiskanu tree in ancient Mesopotamia, you can see that they're shown being almost like an eye shape or almond shaped flowers, which kind of tracks with the way that cannabis grows, along with some other things, including the branch pattern of the actual menorah.
Thank you. That was a quality response. That was using the linguistics. That was using the archaeology. That's what. You're not selling Shroud of Turin T-shirts at the Gates of Jerusalem. Not with this guy, Mr. Malik. He's bringing it. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that. You got any theories that you think that you carry your own that other people wouldn't necessarily be exposed to as much? Like, do you have any wild theories about the Bible that no one else holds, like hypothesis or anything like that?
So I think that probably the way these people, either just because of how emotionally and religiously charged the Bible is, it makes it where people either want to view it completely literally or completely metaphorically or completely bullshit. And right. I think the problem is that we wouldn't ascribe these same qualities to, say, any other indigenous tradition, because there's we look at, well, most people like to see the nuance and not judge by a Western standard, but for instance, there's this one tradition in Esther that in the book of Esther that some people think that it is prophesying the Nuremberg trials, and it's basically drawing allusions between Haman and Hitler, and it's the type of thing where it's very hidden in the margins, where it's not blatant, but you have a lot of examples of these things that seem insignificant to an uneducated or someone who just doesn't know about these little esoteric things. But I wasn't formally trained in yeshiva or anything, but I did grow up with a religious education, so. And it's something I've gotten more into lately. And I think maybe just the fact that people want to view it oh, this part of the Bible is important, but this part isn't, or this part's antiquated. Oftentimes there's stuff there that it might seem insignificant, but that there is something there. As for the thing that I think a lot of people, one of the things that I think really has a potential to, probably it won't, but that it could help to get rid of, or not get rid of, but deal with some of the religious tension, is the fact that even though none of the Abrahamic traditions really recognize the role of Asherah or who she became today, so Judaism, you have the concept of the Shekhinah, which was the presence of God in the temple, but is also kind of responsible for connection to the divine. Now in Christianity, you have the Holy Spirit, which I really think is essentially the disembodied spirit of Asherah, but that's mainly based on the connections I've found between the Shekhinah and Asherah, and then later the similarities between the Shekhinah and the concept of the Holy Spirit. And then I think you even have elements of this in Islam with the role of, is it Fatima is the Queen of Heaven, or I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. Yeah, I think you got a point there. Actually, since while I have you, before you go, there's a super chat that I think maybe you can pick up first. Judaism. Thank you, Ren Angles, for the super chat. Judaism is a cargo cult picking up the cultural technologies of Egypt and Babylon as they cross over the Levant region. What do you think about that?
I think that's definitely a way to look at it, but I also don't think that's the whole picture. So on one hand, you have so for instance, a lot of people, they try to disprove the Bible by looking at the Exodus from Egypt. And on one hand, if you're looking for archaeological evidence from one specific event that might or might not have happened literally as it was told, we know for a fact that there was a point where the land of Israel was in Egypt, in the Egyptian Empire. Yep. So there's definitely this influence that happens on a cultural and even religious level, but I think that more than that, you see the differences. So, for instance, in the plagues of Egypt, it's not as simple as God is cursing Egypt. God is doing battle against the gods of Egypt. So the first one, the Nile to blood, Yahweh's doing battle with the Nile god. Then later the frogs doing battle with, was it Kek or Heka or something?
Yeah.
Then later you have the disease gods, the god doing battle over Ra by darkening the sky, doing battle with the Pharaoh by killing the firstborn. So there definitely is this play on it, but it's also kind of showing, well, Yahweh's greater than these. And so later on you see in Mesopotamia this concept of, well, for instance, what was being discussed before, that we're so much better. We don't have our Sabbath on the 7th day of the month. We have our Sabbath the 7th day every week. And also you could look at the flood story, how in Mesopotamia it was explained as was it Enlil got upset that the humans were being loud and growing too numerous, so he gets annoyed. He basically sends a flood to wipe out all of humanity. And so if you're not exposed to that context, the Yahweh destroying all of humanity to start over seems really cruel. But if you read some of the esoteric stuff behind it, it's not as simple as humanity was being wicked, but doing things that were absolutely abominable. And some people take that to one direction, but really it's just about this concept of being hateful and cruel to each other.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I like that perspective a lot. And those are the type of approaches to the text that I really like to promote more than the fundamentalists or the anti just complete. It's all, we should just abolish the whole thing, get rid of it, and throw it in the fire. I equally oppose both of those viewpoints.
If it makes anybody feel any better, it's not just the Jews that were incorporating other elements from other cultures. You have it all over. You have Greeks, Romans, Etruscans. They're all interacting with each other and taking traditions that aren't theirs, and they're trying to track down, where does this word originally come from, right? Oh, it turns out that's Phoenician, right? We took this from the Phoenicians.
And they're personalizing it and adopting it into the current zeitgeist of the time that is written in. So it's not just taking the text from Sumerians and then copying it and plagiarizing. They're repurposing it, polemicizing it, and making it current in the language of the Hebrew. So it's personal, nationalized, and now it's their story. So it's plausible, I think. Well, anything else you want to say?
Well, just really quickly, one thing that you kind of jogged my mind about, I think I might have actually, I forget where I heard it from, but basically this like the sophistry that happened, within the Mediterranean, how, different cultures were playing off of each other. And so how this interaction that happened in the Hellenistic Levant, where, especially in Alexandria, where you have some Jewish scholars, interacting with the Greeks, and the Greeks are like, oh, we're so much better than you. And then you have some Jewish sophists who they're actually saying like, well, you use your alphabet, which you guys got from the Phoenicians, and the Phoenicians got it from Moses, and Moses got it from God. And so like, it's interesting how these stories get, created, and how they, even like I see a lot of like Jewish tradition that even outside of a Christian context gets kind of adopted just generally by, say, the ancient Near East, and then eventually that, makes its way into Christianity, but also into other traditions as well. Like, for instance, Judaism.
And if you look at like the period, I guess you would call it the Macedonian period, from like 300 to like 100 BCE. In between that period, there's actually a letter from the king of the Laodiceans, and he writes a letter to the high priest of the Jews and says, hey, we just found out that we're sons of Abraham. We're just like you. We should have an alliance. So when I read something like that, it shows me that even in the time period going back to like 200 BCE, the Jewish tradition was having an effect on the Greek culture around it. And people were looking at these texts, and they were looking at it highly, not negatively, but highly. And then that's how you get, even going fast forwarding a couple hundred years, you have the Adiabene kings who literally convert to Judaism, and the Queen Helena is practicing the Nazarite vow for 7 years, and she does it again for 14 years. So people looked at the Jewish religion as like something really like high up, like really well done. They really appreciated it. It was like high level religion, if that makes sense. Like it was like, this is the big boy game. This is like the major leagues of religion. People saw it that way. I do believe that.
Can I ask a question to our guests? Can I ask? We were going over John Littus, and he and the Suda, the Byzantine, encyclopedia, and in it they have an Etruscan creation story that exactly parallels what we find in the Septuagint. It uses the same Greek and everything for the creation, and they claim that it's from the Tyrsonoi, the Tyrrhenians or the Etruscans. What are your thoughts on that?
The 12 houses too.
So I'm not 100% sure on that. Just guessing that might be some like carryover from the Phoenician like colonization of the Mediterranean. I don't know. Like, I know that they had some influence in Sicily. I don't know specifically about like Corsica and Sardinia, which is like more so Etruscan, but I'm guessing there, because like, for instance, Tanit from the like Punic pantheon, there's probably some connection between Tanit and Tiamat, and like this concept of like, the watery chaos. And so, there's probably some shared connection. I just don't know enough about Etruscan polytheism.
This is really specific, though. It goes day by day, and it's everything created on the same day. And it's the Uranos and Gaia are the things that are made in the beginning, when that space is stuck between them. So
it's very interesting.
If it's that specific, either somebody is copying it directly. I don't think it's just an influence now, that we're getting the same things created on the same days, and we're using the very same terminology we use in the Septuagint. Could it be that made it there through an ancestor of both the Etruscans and the Phoenicians? I don't know. Was it the Pelasgians that brought that stuff over? But on this side of the Mediterranean, on the west side of the Mediterranean, it's hard to explain how that Etruscan creation is exactly the creation that we get in the Septuagint. I don't know.
It makes you wonder if there's an earlier version that, maybe spread through Babylonia or something like that.
That's probably where the 12 houses.
Yeah.
And the fact that its focus is upon the astrology. Yeah, that's, oh God, that stuff turns me on. The Punic guys were not far away from that either, because Sebastiniathon, he's writing about the same stuff. They got the pillars of Ammon, brah.
Well, the Punic alphabet is almost like the Hebrew alphabet. They're really, really it's like, I mean, isn't it the same alphabet pretty much?
Identical.
Yeah. It's like Latin and English. They're the same thing. It just the words are different. The way you speak it is different, but when they write it down, it looks exactly the same. So you have to, at that point, you have to admit there has to be a commonality there has to be a common ancestor of the two, right?
You know, now that I think about it, there probably is like something there, because like I mean, yeah, Cartagena in Spain is literally named after, you know, Nova, or was it Nova Cartago?
New City, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, they reached as far as Spain, like, and they really liked islands. So I'd suspect that they had whether like they were the ones who got the story from the Etruscans, or whether there was just this, like, you know, I don't know. That really is an area that should probably be researched. I don't
agree. And you know, it's funny because when Pope Alexander, who was a Spanish, was a what was his name? Borgia, the Borgia Pope from the 15th century, I think it was. There was a conspiracy theory amongst all of his haters that he was a Jew. And the only reason why they thought he was a Jew was because he's from Spain. How dumb that is. But the reason why I bring that up is because people thought Spain and Jews were the same thing, which is not completely false. But the fact that they thought that tells you something about how they're seeing it that way, because, you know, you have the Carthaginians in Spain, you have the Punic language over there, so maybe they're just like putting it together falsely that way, but it makes you wonder why they thought that. You know what I mean?
We discovered medieval rednecks, because that's who you're describing.
Yeah, that's what they basically are.
What do we do? What do we do with the Greeks that got all the way over to Iberia, and they're setting up oracles and worship of Heracles and all that stuff like that as well? So does that factor in?
Interesting. I mean, so that's another thing. I know that I don't know whether there was that association with Heracles beforehand, or whether that was a synchronization with Melkart, because there was the the super chat. That's really funny. But yeah, so Melkart was associated with Heracles, and so that's where I don't know where that association comes from, if it has to do with something there. But the other thing I was going to say is that like, you know, accusation of calling someone a Jew based on their nationality, the Spaniards later during the Inquisition actually used that to attack the Portuguese, because a lot of the Spanish Jews fled into Portugal. Yeah.
Oh, you know, it gets even deeper. There's people who thought that Christopher Columbus was leaving. The reason why he left was because of the Inquisition, because he was Jewish. Like, that's how deep it goes. But, you know, it's all just, we look back at it now, we're like, it's kind of crazy, but it actually tells you a lot about the time period and what people thought. You know what I mean? But yeah, I will admit this, though. I said this to Rabbi Tobias Singer when I was talking to him. You have to admit that the story of the Jewish people is such a profound story, because you have a history that goes back farther than anyone else. I mean, I guess you could say that the Hindu tradition, it goes back pretty far too. But these people are, you know, they have their story. They get taken out of their land. They get brought back to their land. They get taken out of their land for like 2,000 years, and then get brought back finally again. And they go through the Holocaust. They go through Inquisition. They go through getting put in the ghettos. They go through all this stuff, and they come out on top. And you're like, it doesn't matter. I don't care if you're atheist or you're a believer or what. You have to look at that story and say, that's a profound story of human civilization. You know? So, yeah, I really appreciate you stopping by. Anytime I do one of these, you should definitely jump in, man. Definitely.
Awesome. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Nice scholarship, bro. Nice scholarship. Seriously.
Oh yeah. What are you trying to do with your education? That's what last thing I want to ask you.
Ultimate. So I really got interested in a lot of this, like, especially during the pandemic, through, I don't know if you know him, but Sasa. and that's Saving Ancient Studies. I think it was in America, but then they changed it to Saving Ancient Studies Alliance. But generally, what I'm interested in is using like the knowledge that I had the privilege of growing up around. Basically, I see that a lot of anti-Semitism, more than anything, it comes down to ignorance, and like whether that comes from people who they grew up around people who hated Jews, or whether that's just people who they never think they've met a Jew. In general, like really the most humanizing thing is to get to know other people.
Right.
And I think like what I've seen is when that comes to like every tradition, you have that same factor. And more than anything, I think that one of the best ways beyond just getting to know people of other traditions is actually to, understand from people's perspectives, like not in a proselytizing way, but kind of like, what do people believe? Because you can't just have this false piece of like, we are both humans and we are going to get along because of that. Because at the end of the day, when conflicts arise, that whole thing breaks down. You need to build, alliances and friendships that are founded on those differences so that you can appreciate them while also, appreciating the human similarities. And so ultimately, I see a future probably as some sort of like religious conflict resolution advisor. I don't really know. But more than anything, I'm also really interested in the history of conspiracy theories and how, in general, it really ties to a lack of understanding of history, and how a better teaching of that history might actually inoculate society against some of the more toxic elements of conspiracy theories.
Well said, dude. Well said. You're absolutely right. Because when you don't have the knowledge of history, it's very easy to fill in the blanks with something that like could explain it, but it's based off nothing.
Yeah.
So like you want to explain things based on what you don't know, so you fill in the gaps with like, oh, like for example, not to pick on Roman provenance, because I think there's some truth to it, but the idea that like Vespasian created Christianity secretly, and then everyone forgot about it for 200 years, and then Constantine picks it back up, it's just nonsense. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So like that's one of those examples of like not really knowing the history, but like looking, okay, Christianity is the Church of Rome, so therefore Rome had to have created it. It's like it's such a silly way of looking at history, and it's a prime example of like how conspiracy theories are brought up.
Mr. Malik, you sound exactly like the secular Israelis that I worked with in Israel when I was digging there, and I have a tremendous respect for that direction. And I'm wondering, are you going to take it through the language? Because you talk about language and history, are you going to approach this like a scientist from a linguistic standpoint, or will you drift into the religious studies? Like where do you see yourself going?
So I mean, I am a religious studies double major, but I'm really interested in philology and like the connections between, obviously between Hebrew and Arabic, but then also how Aramaic kind of feeds into Greek and Latin influence. And like one thing that I noticed before I ever even like heard of any scholarship on this, which apparently P.D. Newman has done some stuff on this. I think you might have had him on at one point.
I think Derek had him on this video.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's this reference in Jonah, in the fourth chapter of Jonah, to the ricinus or like castor plant. But in Hebrew, it literally just reads kikayon. And there's no real like sensible root for that. But then given my knowledge of, the Greek Eleusinian traditions, kikion, it's probably a reference to a drug, or to a plant rather, that has a similar effect, even if it wasn't that same exact substance. And so I think that looking at everything in its original context, whether that's, Arabic text, Hebrew, Greek, it's so important, because there's honestly, I think maybe about 90% of the context, no, maybe like 75% of context gets completely lost when you translate out. And you could be the one that translated out, and you could read your own translation, and like if you don't remember how you translated it, you're going to lose some of that meaning.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a Satanist reason following guy right there. You remember this? That's the guy that I would take as a grad student, right? That's the guy that I would take and say, look, dude, you've got your Semitic stuff going and you've got that path going. Now you got to get the classical side down. Okay, so we're gonna start looking at the Greek text, because you found the Kakaon, right? You found that's gold. That is not only that, it's hardcore evidence. It's linguistics. It's not something that somebody made up about a shroud because they're trying to sell you something. This is the kind of, this is, I hope you on your, I wish you well on your studies, and I commend you to the muse, and I'm proud, man. I'm proud to see this is the kind of guy we fight with, man. That's beautiful.
Well, I'm glad to have met you, and I hopefully when you are established in your field, I can have you on and we can have a conversation about whatever it is that you're like, you know, looking into it with your experience.
Yeah, definitely. Also, if I want to get in contact with you, do I just like send you an email or what?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And anyone else, I get these comments all the time and I can't answer them all. There is an email on my page in my info. So just send me an email right there and I'll see it. It's right on my YouTube page. In fact, let me just pull it up real quick just to show you guys where it is. Okay. So this is my YouTube channel. Hold on one second.
Here, while you're doing that, let me ask, what do you think about the naked boy that's with Jesus when he's arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane?
You ask everyone.
It's Mark 14, 51 and 52. Just give me.
It is a weird thing.
So from what I understand, because I haven't looked enough into this, but the understanding I got was that that Jesus had basically that there was like someone who had possibly like abused this child, and that like Jesus like saved the child, or that or that Jesus might have been the child. I'm not really 100% sure.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay. Have you seen anything in tradition? Is there any?
Oh, he froze out. Oh, he froze out. Oh, maybe he'll come back. Well, anyway, since he froze out, looks like the gods don't want him to say what he's about to. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, this is my YouTube. This is my email, guys. It's right on my about page. So if you go to my YouTube channel, get to my about page, just email. So, is it Arik?
Arik, yeah.
Arik. If you ever want to get a hold of me for anything, just hit me up right there, and I'll see it. So.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much for. I thought he came back for a second.
Oh no, I think he's still glitching out over there. But yeah, I appreciate you. Oh, there he is.
Yeah. Just tell me, what did you find out about Jesus? Why is he naked? Just tell me that. And can he be prosecuted?
And can he be what?
Can he be prosecuted for something?
So you're saying you think this is why he got arrested? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. I mean, historically, if he's arrested with a naked kid in a cemetery, could the Romans have pushed something on him? Is that why there was a big crowd there? I'm just curious. Have you seen anything in your travels, your studies, that would maybe shed light on this? You know,
not personally, but I have heard some interpretations that like it has to do with like the vulnerability of Jesus, like on the way to the execution, that there might be some connection there, and that it's like an analogy, like but basically there is definitely like some metaphor for sexual violence in the way that Jesus is like unclothed during the different stations of the cross, but I don't specifically know about like what you're talking about. I from what I've heard, it might be that there's this like double parallel, like where you have what one thing that's represented by another thing, but they're both in the same narrative, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think we need hardcore evidence. We need more about that kid. It says he was teaching in the mystery, but we need more. We need more about the drugs. We need to know more about what they were giving him on the cross and why.
Yeah, I guess theoretically it could have something to do with like kind of in the same line of the way that was it not Aristotle. Which Greek philosopher was it that was accused of corrupting the youth of Athens?
Socrates.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe it's something like that where people see this man doing strange things, and they go after him for that, but like they try and insinuate that there's something going on that there isn't. But even then, like, truthfully, like, was like, if the implication that you're making is like pederasty, is that even something that the Romans were against? So like I don't really think that that's
Not really.
as much of an argument. It seems more like it would be something having to do with like impropriety within a ritual setting. I don't know.
Yeah. You're exactly right. It's within a ritual setting. That's where you find the pederasty, and it's perfectly 1st century BC, 1st century AD. And so they're even you call the centaur the pederast, right? He's the one who has that position of teaching. So within the mystery, is there a reason that Hercules or Heracles, that he's taking that young boy into the Adyton, right? His Ganymede. Is there a reason that the only person allowed into this process who's a woman is the Medwa, the woman who started the Magi and their star-based?
You know what else I noticed real quick? Just to jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Orpheus, if you read Ovid's Metamorphoses, when he's talking about Orpheus, after Eurydice dies and he comes back up to the world and he lives a life, I'm not kidding, it describes it. He lives a life of plucking the flower from little boys before they come of age. This is in Ovid's Metamorphoses. And then that's the last thing he's doing before he gets attacked by before Dionysus sends his women after him and tear him up, cut his head off. And then as he's dying, he's still singing. And by the way, Jesus is singing hymns on the cross. This is a connection between the Orphic mysteries and the Jesus mysteries. When Jesus is on the cross, in 3 of the Gospels, he's chanting hymns, the Psalms. And one of them he says is finished. The other 3, they're Psalm quotes. So if he's reading Psalms, he's probably chanting them. He's probably singing them, which means just like Orpheus, the last thing Orpheus does when he's dying, when he's headless, his head is still singing the Orphic hymns as he's dead. So it's like, I think there's definitely a connection there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. It's crazy.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. This was really interesting.
Yeah, anytime. It was great to have you on, man. Good, nice meeting you.
Take care. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. That was awesome.
What a great future he's got ahead of him.
I'm interested to see what in which direction he goes with his scholarship, because everybody, when they get into the scholarship with this stuff, they go into a certain direction and they hone in on certain things and they become like experts in those things, and that's always interesting to see where they go.
Yeah.
You know?
Giving him the tool. You got to give him the tool, just like you with your Greek. Within a few months, you're going to be reading those texts totally by yourself. And you're going to have that vocabulary that's forming, and you're going to be able to see the context like none other people are able to see it. So
yeah,
I'd love to see that when people pick that up and take that up.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it. There's no more super chats left, and we've been doing this for 2.5 hours. At least I was. You jumped in about 2 hours ago. So yeah, thank you guys, everybody. Let me see if there's any more questions real quick before we go, just to see if there's anything. Here's one. Neptune's Lagoon. Because he is the herald of Pisces, the end of Aries the lamb. Sound familiar? Eating fish? Yeah, it could be an astrological thing. What do you think about that? This is the last thing we'll talk about and we'll go. You think it's astrological?
Yeah. What happened to the fish? I hear it was Aphrodite running from the Typhon. Yeah, that ended up in the fish. That's why we don't eat it, brah. Because Aphrodite is mean as hell. And she will cause. Did you ever hear this myth? This be a nice way to finish off. This is Diodorus Siculus. And he says when Aphrodite, or Venus, was on her way out of the ocean, she'd just been born from the foam. She was going to Cyprus, and there was a group of young guys who stopped her and wouldn't let her go any further forward. So out of anger, she took those guys back to their mother's house, and she made them gang rape her.
Really?
Yeah. And that's the end of the myth, right? But
a lot of these Greek myths end with those weird I was trying to find where I have my Ovid's Metamorphosis.
What's the take-home story?
Take-home story? Well, I was trying to find out Ovid's Metamorphosis so I can read that part at the end where he does that weird rite, and it says rite, like it uses the word. He started to take up the rite of. So it's not like they're saying anything. He's doing just anything random. It's a rite.
Right.
So I don't know.
The
question is, how much did the Christian authors want to draw from the Orphic mysteries when they were creating these gospels? That's a question that I don't know. We could speculate on.
Since they were using all the Orphic titles like Savior, right? I can show you Orphic hymns from 500, 600.
Yeah, if you have ears to hear, you can hear. That's an Orphic thing.
I'll show you the word Savior, and it first represents a woman.
So
right? Yeah, it's she who drives that madness. You said at the beginning that Eros has to be there, right? Eros has to be there. Why? Because you can't have magic without Eros.
Well, Eros is the first one to spring forth from Ouranos and Gaia. He's the first.
Demogorgon, baby.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. She's there, and she's got her winged one with her. She's in that garden, baby, and she's got that dragon with her. That's how the magic works. So were the Christians involved in that? I'll say Jesus. He's using the terminology, man, and he's cooking with Magdal. He's cooking with Magdal, and she's got a dildo. Most people don't realize that, but Mary Magdalene walks around with a very expensive dildo.
So that's what you think the oil thing was one of those?
It's a ritual dildo. No. Aristophanes makes fun of it years before.
Yeah.
Aristophanes makes fun of it. Yeah. So what's she doing? I still need to send you that passage, Neil, about when she sticks it inside of him. It's known as.
Yeah, send that to me. But in the meantime, everybody, you have just attained true gnosis.
You have just attained true gnosis. The demiurge has no power over